your reality guy. So this is reality TV when it comes to network marketing.
Okay.
Anyway, we're starting to get some people on the call here, and it's about time to begin. And Mario, I know that there's going to be some more people log on here, and we're going to be recording it, and then after that, then it goes out to thousands of people. So we appreciate you.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Should I go ahead and get started then, Jeff, you think? We're ready to go? Okay, perfect. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar, Sustained Prosperity System with Jef Welch. We also have an amazing guest speaker with us tonight, Glen Jensen, which lives right down the street from me. It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight.
Great to be here.
I want to remind everyone that this call is being recorded, and if you're registered for this webinar, you will receive the recording right after. The next day you should get it. Also, if you're registered, you will receive the workbook, The Winning Approach, which, if you're familiar, at the very beginning, we talked about all the different steps 1 through 15, with steps 1 through 4 being establishing the commitment. And then 5 through 8, and then steps 9 through 15. Okay, the confidence, the commitment, and the confirmation. So tonight we have a guest speaker, and we're also going to have Jef Welch talk to us tonight about consistency. We're excited to have you all with us. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn the time over to Jeff, who's visiting. Well, he's not visiting, but he's out there working in Asia. He just was in Japan. Now he's in Korea. And so joining us live from Korea, superstar Jef Welch.
Oh my goodness. I wish I was a superstar. But the superstars are the ones that are on our teams that actually make us who we are, right? One of the subjects that I want to talk about this week on the Sustained Prosperity System is the term consistency. There's 3 major enemies in network marketing that are constantly battling us on a consistent basis. So consistency is always coming up. The first battle that typical network marketers have, and we've been discussing this over the last several weeks, is rejection, which is the emotional battle, the emotional delay. And then we've been talking about procrastination, which is more of a mental and physical delay of actions. But then we need to talk about consistency. Consistency is one of the things that actually takes people to a place of not allowing them to be successful because they're not creating the correct behaviors throughout their process of learning and actually programming their subconscious mind to be normal at things. Now, I just finished up the webcast with the Korean group, and we talked about the same exact thing. We have a system where we teach people to get 2 new prospects per day, 5 days a week at least, and then you follow up with your prospects on a consistent basis with our follow-up system of steps. Now, the steps have to be designed a certain way, as you know, to where the first 4 steps or so are all centered around building basically trust. Now, if you're a friend of this person that is your prospect, the person you're reaching out to, you've probably already established a certain level of trust. So you don't have to wait so long to develop the trust for the company and the products, but your trust is already established for yourself. In other words, they already know you. So don't slow down, move faster through that process. If these people are close to you, they're friends with you, they're relatives with you, they're acquaintances, people that already have an association with you, you can move very fast through those first 4 or 5 steps as you're establishing trust. Then you go into what we call the commitment stages, and 80% of the commitments that are made in our industry are made between steps 5 and 8 in the follow-up program. Now, this is amazing when you look at the statistics, because only about 3%, even if you have a good system, about 3% actually follow up through step 8. That means that approximately 3% are getting 80% of the signups within a company, and that's pretty much normal. If you look at any organization that has grown and matured over the last 4, maybe 5 years, you're going to see that approximately 3% are doing all the massive work and the sign up and the progressiveness within that organization. To be able to take your team to the next level, you need to increase those percentages, and that's exactly what we do within our Sustained Prosperity System training is we teach people to increase the percentages of follow-up for each particular step throughout the trust follow-up stage and also the commitment follow-up stage, so that instead of having 3%, imagine if you could get your team, to not just have 3% of your organization getting to 8 steps in the follow-up, but what if you could turn that into 10%? You would more than double your success. In fact, if you go from 3% to 4%, you're doubling. It's not 3 to 6. So when you go to 3% to 4%, you're doubling. When you go to 3% to 5%, you're quadrupling your effectiveness. So if you're getting up to 10%, it's amazing what kind of success that you're going to have within your organization. So you're establishing trust, then you're establishing commitment, and then you're establishing what we call the confirmation of the commitment as you continue up with the follow-ups in the steps 9 through 15. Now, we've been going over this on a consistent basis. So the word consistent is very important. We've always said the definition, and there's actually a guy that Glen Jensen he's our guest today, and Glen knows a certain individual. I put out on the email today, there's certain individuals that have been in Glen's organizations where he was the owner of a company, several companies. In fact, he's been the owner of several companies in his career, and he's hit some major home runs throughout the Asian markets and other markets throughout 40 countries. This guy has really been a rock star in moving forward with opening up countries all over the world. He's amazing at opening up countries for a company, and he's amazing as an owner. He's had the ability to do things that a lot of people haven't been able to do. And he's had leaders within his organization that have had success, and some of those leaders, that's probably the only success they've ever had is when they were with him. And some of those leaders have even quoted me on some of the things that I came up with years ago, like the definition of duplication. And the definition of duplication is very simply this: to lead a large group of people to do a few simple actions over a sustained period of time. To lead a large group of people to do a few simple actions over a sustained period of time. And Glenn, I'm sure you've heard that statement many times, and I can show you where I came up with that probably 20 years ago, a long time ago, where we actually pin marked that quote so that we could actually psychologically train people to duplicate, because that definition is filled with information that we need to build consistency with. First of all, let's break that down. And we're going to actually put that definition in so many different languages and kanji and what have you, and we're going to have it as artwork. The definition of duplication: to lead a large group of people to do a few simple actions over a sustained period of time. And I want to break that down. To lead a large group of people. In other words, as you're following up with 2 people, new prospects per day, you're going to end up, if you have 5 days per week, adding 2 new people per day. That's 40 new prospects each month. Within 3 months, you're going to have 120 new prospects within your pipeline of what you're following up with. Now, when you're following up with these prospects, you're leading a large group of people before they have even become a brand partner or a distributor or a representative of yours. You're training them as you're winning them. The duplication process is starting to take place. The synergistic approach of systematic approach is starting to take place. So as you're training them through this process of winning them, and you're following up consistently, you're going to find that if you follow this system that we're training, you're going to have approximately, on an average, of about a 30% conversion rate. So that's 12 new brand partners, distributors, representatives for every 40 new prospects. You will absolutely turn your organization into what we call super mentors, super distributors, super brand partners, super leaders, if they follow the system systematically. Now, there's a lot of psychology built into it, and I'm talking very fast because I want you to get a message today. The psychology that is built into this system is very simply this. Let me give you a scenario. We're creating behaviors that last forever. Many of you have learned how to ride a bicycle when you were a very small child. But even if you did not learn how to ride a bicycle when you were a small child, you could still learn how to ride a bicycle as an adult. Now, it's never too late to learn. However, let's go back to a psychological effect of how we're created. Children, when they're very small, their conscious mind has not really clicked in, but their subconscious mind has. That's why they're able to learn so many things so quickly. If you go to Europe, and you notice that a child, by the time that they're 4, maybe 5 years old, and there's so many different languages within a close proximity, many of them will learn 4, maybe 5 languages fluently before they even reach 5 or 6 years old. So your learning capability, your observation capability, your ability to grasp and absorb is extreme when you're young, before you're 4 years old, okay? The reason for this is because your subconscious mind is fully in control, and the only filter you have is your parents and the people around you that are protecting what goes into your mind and what doesn't go into your mind. You're not making decisions on your own. Once you start making decisions on your own, that's when the conscious mind starts taking over. Now, once the conscious mind starts taking over, it's starting to make decisions. You don't make decisions when you're just a little child. You just go with it. You're constantly just going with it, and you're absorbing everything around you. You're absorbing, you're understanding what colors are. You're understanding what words mean. You're understanding languages. You're learning how to walk. You're learning how to talk. You're learning how to create mobility skills where you can actually hold objects without dropping them. Your ability to learn very fast and very comprehensive is extreme during those first 4 years. But you got to remember, listen to this. Most people, when you ask them, what is your earliest memory? They can't go back into those years and remember, because it was a development time of comprehension. It was a development time where things are being absorbed and you're coming out. You're actually giving yourself the ability to speak, to walk, to have mobility skills. All these things are clicking in. Even though you're learning a lot, most people cannot remember most anything before they were 3 or 4 years old. Their memories start after that point. So when you look back in your life, it's very difficult to remember anything before you were 3 or 4 years old. However, once you start making decisions, and that starts taking place around 4 years old, around 3 or 4 or 5, it depends on you as a person. Once you start making decisions, that's when your memories start kicking in, of when you can actually look back and have a grasp of a memory of what occurred in your earliest childhood memories. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is going to astound you, because it's going to help you understand how a system works. During those first few years, you had nothing to penetrate you other than the influences around you. You had nothing to penetrate your mind. You had a clean version of thinking, and you had the ability to learn fast. You had no contaminant of anything infiltrating and interrupting and distracting your ability to absorb something new. It was not prejudged. It was not thought out. It was not protected. You didn't have that screen or that filter of the conscious mind around you, keeping you from being able to absorb the things around you. That's why it's so important as a parent to protect a small child. Well, during that moment, think about this. You learned repetitive behaviors that stuck with you for life. Language, the way you talk, the accents you spoke within, the different types of behaviors that you learned and the responses that you learned from those behaviors, they lasted forever. Now let's take it a little further. Even after your conscious mind kicks in, you're still learning and you're still gaining behaviors, and your subconscious mind is constantly still programming your life. It's constantly feeding your life with a way that you think. Now, you think you're in control, and you are to a certain point, but you need to understand that the actions that you do and the thoughts that you have is based on the way that you have allowed your subconscious mind to be programmed. If you have programmed it to be positive, you're going to have a positive outlook on life, and your decisions are going to have a different viewpoint. If you have programmed your subconscious mind with negative activities and you constantly allow junk and garbage to come into your life, then you're going to absolutely have decisions that are going to be made that are going to, you're going to wonder, why is this contaminating my thought pattern? Why am I a failure? Why can I not get anything to happen correctly? As we teach this system, what we're doing is we're creating competitive behaviors against our subconscious mind. We're causing everyone to have a pattern of behavioral responses to lead a large group of people to do a few simple actions over a sustained period of time. It's happening over and over and over on a sustained period of time. These actions keep going and keep going, and once you have done it enough and you don't give it a break and you have consistency within these actions and you convince your organization to do the same thing and you don't let it have a break and you keep that going for about 30 to 45 days, then eventually what we see is a pattern of subconscious behavior will start kicking in, and then people become natural at being super leaders. If you become a natural super leader, it's only because you have programmed yourself to go through that pain, the pain of change. You see, it's not that people don't change because they don't want the greener grass on the other side. They don't change because it's difficult for them to cross that line. They don't change because they know change is painful, not where they're going. They know that change takes them to a better place. Know that change takes them to a more successful life. But change itself is uncomfortable because it's like riding the bicycle for the first time. Once you learn how to ride the bicycle, it's fun. But learning how to ride the bicycle, the change that's taking place, the learning and the response and the subconscious program of behaviors that constantly cause you to eventually become natural at something is what gets us to the place where we become good at what we are. If you want to become a great network marketer, you have to practice certain behaviors that get you to that place to where you're successful, and nothing is anything but natural responses once you reach a certain point. This is subconscious programming. I know we're throwing a lot of psychology in here today, but it's simple psychology. You can understand it, and I want you to grasp what I'm saying. If you implement this system where you're telling people to engage and to add 2 new prospects per day, 5 days per week, and follow up consistently through these steps, if you don't keep them consistent through these steps and they have a gap within those first 30, 45 days, they need to re-engage and start at the beginning again so that you have a consistency of those 30, 45 days before they ever stop. If you don't, they're not creating consistent programming behaviors. But if you do, it's going to become fun, like riding a bicycle and being good at it, like speaking a language and being fluent at it, like being a runner and no longer being sore, like going to the gym and getting through the first 2 weeks of pain. And eventually it becomes addictive and it becomes fun and it becomes relaxed and it becomes natural, and it's not something that you're having to think about, and your conscious mind is not being strained anymore, and your subconscious mind is in a flow to where you're actually duplicating within your organization. Now, I know this is a little deep, but at the same time, you're understanding the concept around why a systematic approach works. Now, I just came back from Japan yesterday. I just arrived here in Seoul, Korea, and I'm doing the webcast here from Seoul, Korea, from my hotel room. And yesterday I was in Tokyo, and Glen Jensen, I'm about to introduce Glen Jensen, and he lived in Japan for a while. The guy speaks fluent Japanese, and I wish I could do that. But we're going to talk about systematic approach today. We're going to talk about why it's so effective, and we're going to pull in how amazing the people in Asia are and how we can learn from that, especially Japan. Not only are they systematic, they are so organized. They're so organized going up an escalator, walking down the sidewalk. There's so many of them walking. It's like ants. If you're looking at it from the sky, looking from the skyscrapers, looking down, it's like ants going everywhere. There's so many people walking. And not only are they walking on the left and walking on the right in opposite directions, but you also have a fast lane and a slow lane too. You know, it's amazing how organized they are and how how that they make sure that everything works because they're very systematic. We're going to bring Glen on, and Glen, if you can bring yourself into the there we are. Good to see you, Glen. I've been a friend of Glen's for a long time, and Mario, we're going to bring you back live too there because we want to interact. Been friends with Glen for a long time, and one of the things that we have in common is both of us have been to Japan more times than we can count. Both of us been to Asia more times than we can count. We spend a lot of time over here, and we have a lot of respect for the Asian market, and the American markets can learn a lot from the Asian markets. I really believe that. And one of the things that went off to me like a light bulb back in the day, I was in Japan and I was at an escalator in Shinagawa. In fact, that's where I stay all the time. I always stay at Shinagawa Prince Hotel. I love the Shinagawa area because there's a TGI Fridays around the corner, and there's an Outback Steakhouse around the corner, there's a McDonald's below me, and there's coffee shops, and I know my way around, and I can eat something besides just Japanese food, right? So it's in the train station is very efficient in the Shinagawa station, right? Shinagawa. Now, the part that really made the light bulb go off was years ago, I'm trying to study the Japanese market, and I'm going up the escalator, and this lady taps me on the hip, and she says something like, "Kids, or whatever," and she was telling me basically, you know, be careful or move over, because I looked back, and she was basically telling me to get in line. Everyone was standing to the left on that escalator. Now, you go anywhere in the U.S., anywhere in Europe, anywhere in Australia, anywhere in New Zealand, anywhere in an English-speaking market, and no one follows the rules. No one follows the system. They're rebellious. We're a rebellious creature in the United States, right? So if a sign says stand to the left, walk to the right on an escalator, have you ever been on an escalator in the United States in a mall, and they're everywhere, and if you tried to go fast because you're in a hurry, you'd have to say excuse me 1,000 times before you could get up one 10-foot escalator. It's just no one follows the system. But in Japan, they follow the system. You get on a Japanese airline and you get a hamburger delivered to you at the seat, and it's all in pieces, and it's not put together, and there's an instruction manual how to put your hamburger together. Everything's about a system when it comes to Japan. Now, Glen.
Yes.
How important is it when you're building a network marketing business to create, and I know you know the name synergy, how important is it to create synergy within an organization? And why does synergy matter within an organization to actually take yourself to a different place with the power of people working together in unity to create movement and create momentum?
It's a good question, and it's very important to create synergy. I heard you say many times that definition of duplication to get a large group of people doing a few consistent things over a period of time. I have used that many, many times in my training. So when you talk about synergy, that's exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to synergize or get that group of people to do those few consistent things over that sustained period of time. You also talked about Japan and Asia and the way that people work together. I want to give you a quick example, okay? As an American, I'll give you just a few differences. As an American, if we buy a computer, what do? We grab the box, we tear it open, we pull it out, and we start pushing buttons till we figure it out. An Asian way of doing it, you give that same computer to a Japanese or Korean or something. They open it up very gently. They open the instruction manual and they read the instruction manual from beginning to end, close it back up, put it down, then take the computer out. That's one of the main differences. They look at this system, or they look at the instructions, what they should follow as they begin something new. That's a little bit of the difference in the way that we think, but that synergy is very important. It kind of makes me smile because Synergy or Synergy Worldwide was the first company that I had started. So
that's why I used that as a pun a moment ago.
Exactly. I thought that was a pretty good pun. And where did I start it? I started it in Japan. So so the funny thing is that synergy is very important in creating and sustaining that organization?
Now, everyone that is on this webcast, let me tell you, Glen Jensen has successfully started several companies in his career as the owner, and also has been in charge of other things, not just as an owner, but he was corporate working for companies before he was the owner of companies. And at the same time, he's been very instrumental in bringing a lot of really successful products to the industry within other companies that were not even his. He's been very involved with every piece of this pie spectrum of knowledge. And I've seen myself over the years. If I was sitting in a headquarters, I've done a lot of consulting for different companies, and I'm sitting in headquarters and talking to owners, and I may be picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, Glenn, what would you do with this scenario? What would you do with that scenario? I need your opinion. What have you done in the past?" And Glenn has been very quick at being a good resource of information when it comes to those kind of things, because he's been there, done that. One of the greatest problems that people have in network marketing is not letting go of their ego. Not letting go of their ego. The one thing that I've always been I may have an ego, and people can accuse me of that, and that's fine. But I have never had an ego that would keep me from asking directions. You know, have you ever seen that guy that gets lost? The guy that gets lost, and he's driving, and his wife's in the car, and he's just going to keep driving before he will absolutely let go of any kind of ego and ask anyone for directions, right? He's not going to do. He's just going to keep going further and be more lost. Most people in network marketing that have an ego, that's their problem, is they are lost. They are building off their ego. They're not getting anywhere, and they're afraid to ask instructions or ask direction or ask advice from people who have already been there. And the one blessing that I have in my life that I've been able to look back and say, thankfully, I've done this, is I have connections all over the world of top leaders all over the world, and we all synergistically mix our minds together and talk about things together, and we collaborate together. And you know what it does? It builds our own ability to think things out better. Our wisdom grows beyond what we've experienced. And that's what I've been able to do many times with my connection with Glenn and other people. And Glenn has been a superstar in that arena. Glenn, out of everyone that you have learned things from in your careers as a networker, and I don't call you just as an owner, you're a networker too. You network. You have connections. You have friends all over the world. Who would you consider that has mentored you the most? Who would you consider who has impacted you the most, has made a biggest impact on you, and why? And what was that impact? What was that message that changed your life, that caused you to want to fight through anything that would come your way and still love this industry like you do?
I appreciate that. I'm going to answer that in two parts, if that's all right. I'll talk to you. Maybe I won't name names, but well, maybe I will. We'll see. This is just kind of an open reality TV, but I'll tell you what. When I first started in my career in the industry, I started at Nu Skin, customer service level, very, very beginning level. The one thing that I really appreciated and respected about the owner of the company, his name was Blake Roney, was that he was about building the company. It wasn't always about him as an individual. It was about what can I do to build the company, okay, and make Nu Skin the brand out there. I really learned a lot from that and respected that. I have also worked for other companies where it's not necessarily about the company, it's about the individual at the head of the company. And it's all about the, hey, look at me, I'm so great, etc. But I noticed that those companies can only grow as big as the individual. They can't get past that individual. So when you talk about a mentoring and a learning perspective, that's one lesson that really stuck in my mind. That's why I always think it's important to build the company, the brand around the company as opposed to an individual. That's at least one of the lessons that stands out in my mind.
That's a super point right there, and I think that everyone needs to gain from it. So and I've seen this happen a lot, and not just with top leaders, but also owners at times, haven't we? We've seen owners realize that the distributors within their company built that company with them. It was a synergistic approach.
Yeah,
it was everyone working together. And Glenn, you've seen this, where owners get to a place to where they read their own press and they get so important and their egos get out of check, and all of a sudden they go from being a tire salesman to the point where they're, they think that they're the number one scientist in the world, or the number one, whatever, and everyone in their entire company, all the distributors in their company, they wouldn't have the success without them. In other words, the owner took all the credit. And it wasn't long after that happens that you start seeing crumbling start taking place.
Exactly.
Crumble. It's like the Bible says, pride cometh before the fall, right? It kind of clicks in right there, doesn't it? Pride comes before the fall. When people actually let their ego get into the way and it's all about that person, then that's when the company starts losing. I found that my greatest success is the fact that my attention is on my team, not myself. My attention is about my team. My passion is about what I can do for my group. How successful can they be? This is the one industry that the more that you focus on your people instead of yourself, the better success you are. And still, sometimes the egos get in the way. Now, Glenn, what would you feel? I hope you are okay with me bringing you into this hot spot right here.
Absolutely.
What's probably some of the lessons that you could teach us today? What's some of the things that you could tell us and be honest with us about that people wouldn't normally hear? That here you are successful, you've made millions of dollars, you've done amazing things in your life. And a lot of people respect you. You've been able to be a leader to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. But the question is, what did you do to mess up? What did you do? What was the biggest mistake that you've made that you've learned from? Because I've made mistakes. Mario's made mistakes. Everybody that's in this world's made mistakes. But in this industry of network marketing, are we afraid to say it? Have you made mistakes?
No,
I don't think a leader that is a leader ever, that is a good leader, is a leader that doesn't make mistakes. I told one of my leaders here in Korea last night, I want you to screw up. I want you to mess up. I don't want you to be afraid to mess up. I want you to get out there and just do it and quit worrying about it. So can you relate to that?
I can, absolutely, and thank you. I'm going to answer that in, once again, a two-part answer, all right? So the first one is, let's go to ego, and people believing their own ego and their own press releases and so on. I'm going to give you an example of, think about yourself in any sporting event, okay? You're sitting at a basketball game, a football game, a soccer match, it doesn't matter what it is. If your team is doing well, you're yelling, "Yahoo, we're doing well, we." If they stand up and miss a shot or miss a goal or something, you're like, "They suck." You immediately go from a we to a they. People can't handle that negativity, that they're not part of the winning side or the group that's doing the best. And it's unrecognizable. They just do it, okay? A we versus they. So that goes back to the ego that you were talking about a little bit earlier. If someone joins, this is part of the lessons that I've learned and part of the things that are successful. Everyone joins with great expectations, like, I'm going to be successful. We are the best. Then they hit that first challenge. And the fingers come out, just like in the sporting event, saying, they suck. It can't be me that's making the mistake. It's them. The company's bad. The products are bad. The pay plan is bad. My upline sucks. the owner's terrible. I don't care what the excuse is, but just like that sporting event, the negativity comes out and they're pointing their finger in every direction. That's one of the difficult things for me in the industry, because as an owner, you have thousands or millions of people who, if they're not successful, well, then it must be your fault. Okay, it must be something else. So that is part of it. Another lesson, okay, is that ego, Jeff. And I only mention that because you mentioned that, and I try and understand that and talk about that. And I've sort of tried to live by this principle that is, I think it was originally stated by Stephen Covey, but he says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Okay, so I've always tried to say, look, we care about you. We'll work with you. We'll try and help you through that difficult time, and just trying to lock arms with people and move the group forward, okay, as an organization. Now, with me, you asked about some of the biggest mistakes that I've made, okay? There's a lot, but I can think of a few along that lines where it says people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I pour my whole heart and soul into a company, and you really get involved with groups of people. You can bring people in, and then when an investor or when someone from the outside comes in and starts attacking and wanting you to get rid of people or terminate people or, you know, cut expenses or whatever, there's times when I've just dug my heels in, said, I can't. We've made a commitment to a country or to a people, and that usually runs me afoul of bankers, investment bankers and groups like that. So, and that has literally cost me tens of millions of dollars. So when I look at it and say, okay, what's my biggest flaw? What's my biggest mistake? Maybe being too loyal to people as opposed to being too loyal to the bottom line.
Well, let's play on that for just a moment, because sometimes as an owner, and I want people here that are listening, which are distributors in companies, brand partners in companies, representatives in companies, they don't understand the corporate side. And you've been on the corporate side, and there's a big gap sometimes between understanding of what happens on corporate and what happens in the field, because the field works within a different mindset than corporate, but you understand both. So I'm gonna throw this at you. Two different things I'm gonna throw at you. Number one, it's amazing how many decisions when you're an owner that you have to make, and many times when you're making a decision, you're trying to do everything you can to save a company. You're trying to do everything you can for what's best for the company. And you know that those decisions that you're making, that you only have certain choices. Every decision is a multiple choice, right? You have this decision or this decision, there's solutions. And you know if you make this decision, then you're hurting people here. Or if you make this decision, you're hurting people here, but you have no choice but to make one or the other. Those are tough places for owners to be in, and owners find themselves there on a consistent basis. And many times it happens when an owner has to adjust a compensation plan, or an owner has to maybe shut down a country because the profits are just not there, and it's affecting others in other countries that have built into those countries, or the people who were in the country that's getting shut down own down lines in other companies, and now they can't own them anymore. There's decisions that are made that are so dynamic, much bigger than what a lot of people in the field ever see, that an owner has to go through. And the pressure is on because you do care. You care about those people. And many times you're making a decision that you're having to make the decision that is the least abrasive to the whole picture. And you know someone's going to get hurt. How does that make you feel as an owner? How does that make you feel in the past as an owner? And how do you give advice to the people that are in the field that are listening to us right now of what an owner goes through, so they can understand what corporate goes through to make sure that us in the field have a successful platform to play on?
It's extremely difficult because as an owner, you realize in my last company, we had 1 million distributors, 1 million members. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I knew that there was a big portion of those distributors and leaders who this is their full-time income. Their families rely on it. It's their future, and they've worked hard to get to that level. But like you said, as an owner, sometimes you're faced with making a decision. If you're a publicly held company, not only do you report to the company, but you report to the shareholders. You have different people that you have to report to, even as an owner, whether it's a bank or a lending institution or a merchant account or whatever. Sometimes you're forced to make these hard decisions. So when you're put in that type of predicament, it's very, very difficult. I could liken it to you're stuck in a trap. Well, what do you cut off, your hand or your foot? Well, I don't want to cut off either one. Let's find another way. I want my hand and I want my foot. And if you're being forced to make a decision, it's a tough, tough decision, knowing that you're going to affect thousands of people at whatever level, like you talked about, at an upper level, mid-level, or lower level. And it causes you a lot of sleepless nights. I'm sure there are people who can just make that base decision and cut and do it very easy. But for me, I always recognize that you're affecting the lives of people. And so I try and take that into consideration. And I think most every owner does try and take that into consideration, that how will this least affect the people that have got us to this point.
There's a lot of owners that have, in my opinion, over a period of time, making certain decisions because there's so much money involved. It's almost like they have to turn their hearts cold to be able to keep the company moving forward because their decisions involve a lot of cold decisions. In other words, they have to almost take the emotion and the attachment of what we're talking about right now completely out of it, or they're going to be making decisions that are based on emotion instead of based on logic sometimes, and then it doesn't really work out either way. So there's a balance. There's a balance, because once an owner starts becoming cold-hearted with his decisions, they don't realize they lose ground within a network marketing company, because this is a relationship marketing concept. This is a people business.
Very true. So
this is a very delicate matter that we're talking about here, where there's a gap between the way corporate thinks, owners think, and the field thinks. But all these angles, all these different, I do too. We bought, and Mario does as well. That's why this is a good synergistic call here that we're doing. We're talking about things people don't normally talk about today, aren't we? Mm-hmm. Now, what about the field? What do you see that the field doesn't understand, or what do you see that the corporate should understand more about the field? Because don't you agree? Mario's a good example. He's been in corporate for so many years. Now he's in the field. Mario, you have a different perspective of the field now.
Yeah, I got to comment on that for sure. I mean, being in the field now, hey, I want every country to be open today, right? I want to go into every country and just open up business and blow it out, right? But coming from the corporate side, I understand that is not healthy. I mean, I've been an executive with companies where we've had meetings and we're like, oh no, we're losing millions and millions of dollars in this country. Of course the field doesn't see that, right? They have a cousin in this country and they want it open right now. And so that's one of the main things that I've seen as we're building internationally. Yes, we always want it to move quicker and faster, but also there's that side of, having healthy company, and I know you understand this, Glenn. You're the expert at this.
No, I absolutely understand that. And Jeff talked about one of your biggest mistakes. I can look back and say, hey, one of my bigger mistakes is that I opened 60 countries in 60 months. And that's not NFR, that's on the ground, operations, infrastructure, banking.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
And how many times did I say to you, I said, Glenn, I said, you opened up, I didn't say 60, I said, you opened up 43 countries too fast. I told you that.
Yeah,
but at the same time, you were having fun.
We were having fun, but We were having fun, but we were also plowing all of our profit back into opening the countries, because it is not cheap. It is not an inexpensive thing, as you all know, to open a country. And so you're right, Mario. Distributors constantly are like, open new countries, open new countries. We've got an aunt, brother, uncle, sister, cousin who lives there, and we can do amazing things. And it's a constant bombardment. And then you have your big leaders that you're working together with who are demanding, open this country, I'll blow the doors off. Then you open it up, and one of the funny things is a lot of times it doesn't work out, and then they say, oh, you're stupid for opening it. Hey, you're the guy who drove me to open it. Well, you shouldn't listen to me.
You bringing back up a point that you brought up earlier. A lot of leaders work off emotion, and we've been saying this. 80% of the people who join a network marketing company join over emotion, and most people who lead in their business lead off of emotion. And then when you're on the corporate side, you're having to lead with logic. You're having to manage it with logic. So there's a conflict between logic and emotion on a consistent basis. And it's amazing that when the emotion is intact within the field and a person is leading off of emotion, especially egotistical emotion or narcissistic egotistical emotion, what happens there is what you just said earlier. Anything that happens, they don't take ownership to any of the problem. They only take ownership to the glory. They don't take ownership to anything but the recognition. They don't take ownership to any of the problems or any of the issues, because they don't want anyone in the organization to even think that they're a part of anything other than perfection, because that's just the way that they are. And then the owners are sitting back, and the people in the corporate headquarters are sitting back working on salaries, and they're watching these people making $50,000, $100,000 a month, walking around like whimsical, crazy people sometimes. And how does that make people in the corporate headquarters feel? Because people here on this call need to understand how corporate headquarters feels when they're working on a typical salary, and they're watching people like us go around to all the beaches and the countries all over the world making good money. But the corporate person is the one who takes that call, that's working for a salary, like Mario did for many years, right? And you're listening to people whining all the time. That's what the corporate side thinks. We're just a bunch of whiners. That person over there is making all kind of money, and they're traveling all over the world, and they don't work 9 to 5 like I do, or 8 to 5 like I do, and 8 to faint. They don't do what I do, and I'm making this much, and they're making this much, and all I have to do is listen to their whining, and I can't really say what I want to say. We got a big gulf of space between this corporate and field and the understanding of it. There should be a book. There should be a training just on the field understanding corporate and the corporate understanding the field. There's so much involved there. I want your take on this. When you've seen your staff in the background, and you've had hundreds of people in your staff, and you see your staff in the background, what is the biggest complaint that you've heard generally that the distributors out here in the field, we can hear from you? How can we learn from you of what the corporate employees go through because of us and their lack of understanding of us and our lack of understanding of them? Give us some insight here.
I'll give you a quote that I heard 20 years ago or more. This is from a senior VP level person who made a comment in an executive boardroom one time. He said, this would be such a great company if it weren't for all these damn distributors. And that has stuck with me for years and years. And I turned and looked at him and I said, you do realize that if it weren't for these damn distributors, you would not have a job, right? But a lot of people don't see past that. A lot of the corporate staff think, oh, these guys are causing me extra work. They're causing me to work late. They're always wanting all these changes to the pay plan. They're wanting all these extra brochures and extra products. Man, they're asking me to open another country. So a lot of them do see it as you're taxing their time. Now they're hourly or salary. They're not necessarily paid on a commission type basis. They're more, I'll go in and put in the time and get through the day. So any extra work that comes to them or is forced upon them creates a little bit of animosity. And you're right. They see all the distributors jet setting around the world, drinking out of the coconuts on the beaches, making the 50, 100,000 a month. And they're saying, this isn't fair. I work all day long and I make X amount. I hear that, I won't say all the time, but often of corporate folks saying, you know, it's not fair. You should pay me more like you pay the distributors. So
Yeah.
there is a chasm, a gulf between corporate and the distributor field, and that there should be better ways that can be breached. But the way it is, there is that gulf.
I would totally agree with that. That's, I mean, just working on the distributor side, it's a completely different mentality. You know, if it's after 5 o'clock and I get a phone call, if it's midnight and I get a phone call from a leader and I need to do a 3-way call, hey, I'm all for that. Call me anytime, right? Because I'm building my check and building my business. Now, sometimes at corporate, you know, after 5 p.m. or on Saturday or Sunday, I remember not wanting to get a call, to be blunt, right? Because by accepting that call, that didn't mean any more money in my pocket, you know, from the paycheck. So it's a completely different mentality, you know, when you're building your own business that way.
Sure is. We've come out with some great insights here today, and this is great. Now, Glenn, you've had a lot of history in Japan. People want to build all over the world. They want to be successful all over the world. And I'm using Japan as an example because I just came back from there yesterday, and I love Japan. I just absolutely love Japan. I'm in Korea right now. I love Korea. Korea is very aggressive. The people here are just dynamic. As you know, we hit some home runs over here in Korea with some of the things that we've been doing, and other people in other companies have done as well. And I have so many different friends that work in the Asian market. You speak Japanese. You have an understanding of the culture in Japan. If you remember years ago, I put together a system where it put everyone on what I call a distributor manual, where everyone knew exactly what to do. You're talking about reading the manual before you open up a computer. We put those leaders, as you remember, on a systematic approach where there was the distributor manual. But I also noticed something, and this is tying in to some of the things we talked about tonight. It's one thing for a company to push something onto a distributor field. It's another thing for the distributors to buy into something. And what we did in the past is we have developed, and we knew this would work in the Asian market because they're free thinkers, but yet at the same time they're drivers, and at the same time they follow a system, but they don't like to be controlled. So I've found that over the years, it's best to have what we call a distributor advisory board. And I'm just giving everybody advice when you're building in your organizations in Asia, is to develop a good core group of people who are very solid and loyal to you as a leader. And then within that group, make sure that they are endorsing the direction of everything that's going. So once that happens, the rest of the field gather in and come together for it because the loyalties are to the network. Many times companies push things toward people and it doesn't work and they don't understand. The reason is because people are in this business because of freedom. They're in this business because they want that freedom. So unless we actually take the synergistic approach of the simplicity of a system to where it's directed and it's controlled by the influences of the influencers, it's almost impossible for it to happen, isn't it? And once we do that the correct way and politically we make it happen, it's amazing what occurs. Can you give us your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I picture a network marketing company like a family. You've got the mom and dad. We can call those guys the owners or the corporate people. Then you've got the kids. in a lot of ways, the kids don't like to be told what to do. If mom and dad come out and say, hey, go clean your room, or hey, go do this, it may take them a while to go do it. It may take them time to get up there and do that. So I've always looked at it, when you get that advisory board like you've talked about it, you could consider those the big brothers or the big sisters. If the corporate works with the advisory board, says, hey, here's what we're looking at doing, and these are the reasons why, get them to understand it. Now you guys go tell the team. Then it's like your brother or your sister saying, hey, Jeff, come on, let's get this done. Oh, okay. Then you go running up and do it. So typically on a comp plan change, getting people behind a product, any of the major decisions that need to be done, I love to bring the advisory board in, communicate, guys, here's what we need to do, and these are the reasons why. Get them a good understanding, and then at conventions or events, have the advisory board members get up and talk about it, because then it's peer-to-peer, saying, here's why we need to do this, guys, and let's make it happen, and it's very well accepted. You don't have that conflict with a perceived authority figure saying, hey, here's what needs to be done. Does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely. What's your take on that, Mario? Because I know we're coming here to the end of a call, because you're seeing Mario's got light bulbs going on. I know that's what it is.
What I wanted to comment was that's how I met Jeff, 15 years ago, when, I was over in North America, and my job was to work as a corporate employee directly with the top distributors. And so one of my responsibilities was to be that person in charge of the distributor board, and that's where I met Jeff. And we did that same thing, when there was changes, I would get close to those leaders and have them, get behind it and then share that with their people. So I understand it completely what you're saying.
Yeah.
When you get the endorsement of the top leadership, if a company doesn't take the endorsement of their ideas through the top leadership, they're not capable of actually driving the emotional force of what actions need to take place throughout the organization. It's just smart to understand this concept. And Glenn, you obviously understand that concept, and I've seen other owners understand it as well. And we've covered a lot of good points here, and I think this is opening up the minds to a lot of people here. It's very important to make people feel important. I want to end the call with that. It's very important to make people feel important. If you ever have a team that is going in your mind and you want it to go in the right direction, you want it to go into a momentum, the only way you're going to be able to accomplish that is you have to pull your tight core group together, and you have to work together as a team to accomplish the task. That's what we do. We're constantly doing that. You can't pull, like right here in Korea, we probably have close to 40,000 people in our team alone. We've done that in 6 months or so. So can you imagine me inviting 40,000 people into a room and trying to discuss something? It doesn't work. Can you imagine an owner trying, like Glenn saying, I'm going to invite 1 million people into a room to discuss something? It can't happen. If you're going to cause things to happen, it has to do it like the network. Whatever you do at the top is going to go all the way to the bottom. If you have integrity at the top, it's going to go all the way to the bottom. If you have a lack of integrity at the top, it's going to go all the way to the bottom. If you have ego at the top, it's going to have a crumbling effect all the way down to the bottom. If you have a synergistic approach of a systematic mentality, politically speaking, making sure that everyone is going in the correct direction and everyone's directed the way they should, can you imagine what that will do to the entire organization? That's what we're doing with a sustained prosperity system, is we're putting everyone on the same mindset of building not just network marketing companies, not just network marketing organization, but relationship marketing. It's about relationships. If you understand people, and that's what psychology is all about, is understanding the way people think, what makes them tick. We built this system around what makes people think. Building those behaviors consistently so that they become natural, and now riding the bicycle is fun. Now doing the system is fun. So if you have people in your organization that are not consistent with the system, start them over, stay on them until they are consistent for that 30, 45 days to where those responses, those actions, those behaviors start to become natural, and they're going to experience success. The conversion rates are going to rise. Their confidence level is going to go up, because think about it. When you're starting to ride a bicycle, there's no confidence there. You're wobbling all over the place. But once you become good at something, it becomes natural, your confidence level goes up. Who wants to join a leader that's not confident and secure in what their decisions are? Once you have become confident as a distributor, a brand partner, a representative of your company, you come across in such a way that that person that you're reaching out to as your prospect says, I can work with that person. That person is going to help me get to that next level, because look how confident they are. They know what they're doing. They know how to ride the bicycle. This is Jef Welch. I'm going to sign off over to Mario Brown. It's such a pleasure to have Glen Jensen as our featured guest tonight. And
thank you, Glen.
Morning here. And it's such a pleasure, Glen. You're such a dear friend. We go way back, and I have a lot of respect and a lot of trust in you, and I appreciate your knowledge, and it's such an honor to have you on this training call.
Thank you for your friendship, and I'm happy to be here. Whatever I can do to help, always. So thank you, Jef. Great lesson, I think, for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Mario, thank you.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you. Jef, I appreciate you sharing what you did tonight. Consistency is actually something that we're learning right now. You know, you can know the system inside and out and all the steps, but if you're not consistent, you know, you're not going to have success. And so we are definitely looking at that and working on that. And they will admit if they're not consistent with that, they're not having success. And so right after this, we're doing another one in Spanish. That's going to be our main topic for that. Glen, it's been a pleasure to have you. Now, Glen's my neighbor. We only live like a few blocks away. So next time we can be in the same room and do this.
We should. That would be awesome.
But it's a pleasure having you, a person well respected in this area and all throughout the profession. So thank you for being with us tonight. We have more great speakers coming up every Thursday, same time. March 10th, we have, just to mention real quickly, Tom Chenault. March 17th, Tony Canuli. March 24th, Margie Aliprandi. Same link, same time. So please make sure to join us. Thank you all, and have a good night. Thanks, Jef.
Thank you, Mario.
Bye-bye.